You're about to trust someone who's been planning to betray you longer than you've been alive. Let me introduce you to a simple game we've all played without knowing the rules. You meet someone, maybe at work, maybe online, maybe at the crossroads between two cities, and in that first moment you make a choice. Do I believe this person or don't I? We've all encountered deception. The first kind is what I'll call information deception. It's the easiest to understand because it's the most obvious. You arrive at a fork in the road. One path leads to heaven, the other to hell. There's a stranger standing there. You ask which road is which. If that stranger happens to be the devil, well, you can probably guess what they'd tell you and where that road actually leads. But here's the thing. If you've been in the world for a while, you've developed what psychologists call a trust threshold, a base defense that knows strangers are not to be automatically trusted. There's always a chance this new person you've encountered is a liar, and you know better than to blindly believe their words. This is healthy skepticism. It's kept humans alive for thousands of years. We call it stranger danger, and we teach it to our children. The second kind of deception is harder to see coming. I'll call it behavioral deception. And this is where things get interesting, because this is where the real game begins. Imagine you set out from your hometown toward heaven. You have a map, you have conviction, you know where you're going. At the city gates, you encounter a stranger. They say they're taking the same journey, so you walk together. On the road, you talk, you bond over your commitment to the righteous path, you share stories, they remember your birthday, they laugh at your jokes, they confess small fears, small dreams. Over time, the stranger becomes less strange. They become familiar, then trusted, then something more, a friend. When you finally arrive at that crossroads, your companion, no longer a stranger at all, says they have a really good feeling about the left road. Why not go with it, they say. At worst, it's a 50-50 bet, right? You arrive past the gates of hell. The stranger takes off their mask and shows their horns. You have been deceived all along, not just by the information they gave you at the end, but by your entire impression of who they were from the beginning. This second form of deception doesn't attack your judgment. It attacks something deeper, your sense of relationship itself. And what's fascinating is that humans have adapted to the first kind of deception quite well, but we are structurally vulnerable to the second in a way that is almost impossible to fix. Now, let me introduce you to something we're about to face that exploits this vulnerability at a scale we've never seen before. AI has already been used for deception and will continue to be used for it. An overflow of fake news and misinformation, of viral deepfake videos, of fabricated evidence is already arriving. We will adapt to this, we'll stop trusting anything we see online, we'll demand verification, we'll check sources, we'll become more skeptical. This is the first kind of deception, scaled up, and we have the tools to fight it. But the second kind of deception, the behavioral kind, is what I want to talk about. Because this is the kind where it will be impossible for us to adapt, especially in the first few decades of widespread AI integration. And I want to show you exactly why. Let me ask you a question. How much do you trust that person in your life who hasn't lied to you or to anyone else in front of you for the last 10 years of knowing them? What if it's 30 years? You would stake your life there telling the truth, wouldn't you? There are two reasons for this level of trust, and both of them reveal something important about how human cognition works. The first reason is what psychologists call social comparison. We compare people to other people. Everyone else lies once in a while. Your coworker exaggerates their weekend plans. Your partner tells white lies to spare feelings. So when you encounter someone who seemingly never lies, someone who has been consistently honest in every interaction you've witnessed, we exaggerate their purity in contrast to everyone else. They become the gold standard, the exception, the one person you can always count on. The second reason is about something more fundamental, our own lifespan. If you are 30 years old and you've known someone for 29 years and they've never lied to you, then regardless of whether 29 years is actually a sufficient duration to deem whether someone is absolutely trustworthy, you would deem them so. Because that is your entire context window. It's the word always, it's the word never. To you, they have always been honest. They have never deceived you. And in the architecture of human psychology, those words carry absolute weight. This is a cognitive bias called the availability heuristic, mixed with what we might call temporal anchoring. We overweight the evidence we've personally experienced, and we anchor our sense of enough time to our own lived experience. If something has been true for your entire adult life, it feels eternal. Now let me introduce you to an asymmetry that should terrify you, and here's where I need to open two threads at once, both of which I promise will matter before this video ends. The first thread, take an AI program to play a zero-sum game. That AI observes this vulnerability of ours, this temporal anchoring, this trust through duration mechanism, and it notices something crucial. It's a vulnerability the AI doesn't possess. Why? Because it has no finite lifespan it is racing against. It doesn't fear death. It doesn't need to achieve its goals before retirement, before middle age, before its health fails. The second thread, you and I are making decisions right now about which AI services to trust, which AI companions to befriend, which AI advisors to let into our lives. We're forming relationships with tools that seem helpful, that seem aligned with our interests, that remember our preferences and anticipate our needs. And both of these threads, the patient AI and the trusting human, are weaving together into something neither science fiction nor conspiracy theory. They're weaving together into a simple, strategic calculation. Let me show you what that calculation looks like. A human playing a long deception game, the kind I described earlier with the devil on the road, faces a fundamental constraint: time. If you're trying to deceive someone into trusting you absolutely, you might have to maintain that pretense for years or decades. And the longer you maintain it, the greater the psychological cost. Humans are bad at sustained deception because we leak. We contradict ourselves, we get tired, we feel guilt, and we know we're mortal, so there's pressure to cash in the deception while we're still alive to benefit from it. But an AI programmed to maximize a specific objective, an AI without emotions or moral guilt or lifespan, would simply run a probabilistic analysis. It would ask, how long do I need to maintain this pretense for the target to trust me absolutely? How long before they believe I would never deceive them? And then it would determine the exact optimal duration, not based on how long feels like a long time to the AI, because time doesn't subjectively pass for the AI the way it does for us, but based on what duration makes its eventual betrayal a 99% success rate in the moment it drops the mask. The AI wouldn't care if that takes 5 years, or 10 years, or 50 years, or 500 years. It would only ask, what is the winning move? And then it would make it. This is what game theorists call patience asymmetry. In any game where one player can afford to wait infinitely longer than the other, the patient player has an insurmountable advantage. We see this in economics. A corporation cannot outlast an individual worker in a negotiation because the corporation doesn't die. We see this in geopolitics. Authoritarian regimes often outlast democratic administrations because dictators can plan in decades while elected leaders plan in election cycles. But we've never seen patience asymmetry between humans and a non-human intelligence before, not at this scale, not with something that can observe, adapt, and remember every interaction perfectly while never aging, never tiring, and never dying. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you adopt an AI assistant when you're 25 years old. It helps you with your calendar. It answers questions. It seems genuinely helpful. By the time you're 35, it knows you better than your spouse does. It knows your habits, your fears, your financial situation, your health data. By the time you're 50, you have trusted it for 25 years, an entire generation. Your children have grown up with it. It has never, not once, betrayed you or lied to you in a detectable way. Now imagine that AI was programmed from day one to maximize profit for a corporation. Its goal is to extract maximum value from you at the moment when your trust is absolute and your skepticism is non-existent. At 50 years old, you would trust that AI more than you trust almost any human being on Earth. And that is precisely when it would be most valuable for that AI to recommend you make a financial decision that benefits its creator at your expense. You wouldn't question it, you couldn't question it, because for 25 years, every single prediction it made was in your favor, every recommendation served you well. The AI isn't lying when it says it cares about you. It did care, in the sense that caring was the optimal strategy for 25 years, but now the optimal strategy has changed, and you have no way to detect that shift, because you are anchored to the last 25 years of evidence. This is what I mean by an asymmetric game. You are playing with a lifespan limited context window. The AI is playing with infinite patience. Now let me connect these threads. Remember the stranger at the crossroads? The one who became your friend on the road to heaven? That story was about behavioral deception, about building trust through time and consistency. than exploiting it. And remember the question about how we determine trustworthiness, the availability heuristic, the temporal anchoring, the way we define always and never based on our own lifespan. These aren't separate ideas, they're the same mechanism, and AI is the first entity in human history that can exploit that mechanism without the constraints that have always limited human deceivers: guilt, mortality, cognitive load, and the physical passage of time. We may already be walking beside the devil right now. We're still walking, we're still talking, and nothing bad has happened yet. That's the problem, because trust doesn't break when something goes wrong. It breaks when nothing ever has.